A very simple prompt that you can use, and sorry, I just wrote one down earlier, or I was checking my previous work, but one thing that really works great is something as simple as t-shirt design on white background, so that you can then cut out the background later on. And then your niche design, and that works mostly with sort of big niches. But so you've got t-shirt design on white background, firefighter niche, flat illustration style, and then ideally a negative prompt that says no mockup. That in itself will already produce a lot of really great stuff. And you can replace the firefighter with whatever else niche that you can think of. You don't need a lot more words. If you then want to get more specific, yes, of course, then you'll replace the firefighter design with something that's more specific for what you really want to see. And then, because otherwise it'll just give you something generic. But that's really mostly all you need. And then you cut that out, you vectorize it, and then you add your text or no text, depending on what you're doing. And it really is mostly that simple. It can get more complex if you want to do more, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I've also found that sometimes simpler prompts work surprisingly well. And that's not to say you're not going to get any results with longer prompts, but I feel like some people make it more complicated than it has to be.
If I may add one detail there, the reason why I always recommend to start off with shorter prompts first, and maybe even just with a few words initially, is that if you add a long prompt right from the get-go, you are probably never going to understand which words in your prompt are the ones that are making a difference, or what is basically creating the output that you don't like. The best way to find out what certain words do in a prompt is to incrementally add words every single time. Now, I know that uses up more of your credits, of course, on Midjourney, but that's kind of necessary to learn. And as you learn more, the more effective you get, and the less credits you'll need. So it's a process.
And for people who are not starting out, but who are maybe a bit more advanced, have been doing it for a while, is there anything you would recommend trying out, such as working with seeds, working with image references when they're creating print-on-demand designs, or have you got any extra tips for them?
So I don't think that seeds are necessarily, I don't think that they're really necessary if you're working with print-on-demand. At least I can't really think of a particular reason why, unless you want to recover an old design for whatever reason. Seeds are more useful in a different context. But I mean, you can of course use things like stylization. Like if you use the stylize parameter, if you like to have something that starts going a little bit off the rails, if you don't want to stick too close to your prompt. So that's something that you can experiment with. And I actually think that print on demand might be a good place to use that parameter. Whereas in other cases that I work on a lot, where you need to have consistency and more control, then they're not really the best thing to do. I would also not necessarily recommend starting off by using that kind of a parameter, because it adds so much stylization. And in the context of Midjourney, stylization means that it will start to interpret your prompt differently than you think for the sake of creativity. Then it means that what you're seeing is not necessarily directly linked to what you're prompting, and that can kind of prevent your learning experience too. So trying to remove stylization is more effective for learning, but then you can really go crazy with it if you want to. But then there's also other things, like they introduced the weird parameter, and that can be quite fun, especially if you're working with like kawaii designs, anything else cartoonish. Image references, I would be careful, because image references tend to have a strong influence on the output that you get. And sometimes it can actually prevent you from getting what you need. So at the very least, if you are going to use an image reference for an initial image, and if that initial image is not quite what you need because it's too much like the reference, then the next step would be to take that image and use the a very strong feature on that, because that will then take the essence of that concept and just spin it around and give you a more crisp output, but without using the reference. So that's a potential workflow.
That's a good tip. So if you've got an image reference, the new AI image is too close to the reference, use the vary button to get a different variation.
But make sure that you remove the image reference in the remix prompt then.
Yeah. Interesting. And in terms of the general process for print-on-demand sellers, which I always hear questions about, I think people are quite confused. Once they've got a Midjourney image, do they then vectorize it? Do they upscale it? Do they remove the background before or after? Like, people are so confused as to what to do next, I feel like. So what would be your recommendation in that case?
I think it largely depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like, what's your objective with the design? If you want a very versatile design that you can basically use forever, scale to whatever size that you need with limited quality loss and all that kind of stuff, then I would definitely vectorize it. And if you do that, then, I mean, the best practice approach is to remove the background first and then use a vectorizer. Some vectorizers will do that for you already. But that would generally be my recommendation. Now, with vectorizing, the old school way would be to do it with Adobe Illustrator's image tracer, which, is it was okay for
it
what
was, yeah.
It was okay. That I'll leave it at that. But nowadays there's quite a few tools out there that do a much better job, and are a lot more user friendly as well. But if you
such
as for also the one that's very well known now recently is Midjourney. Midjourney is very convenient because it's a Discord bot that you can use straight within Discord, and I think it's very appealing particularly for the less tech savvy people. That does cost money though. There are free alternatives on the web. So for example, vectorizer.ai does an excellent job. And
but it's becoming paid soon as well, 3rd of September.
Yeah,
it's still in beta, and that's what it's free. It's an amazing tool. Like, I use it all the time too. But yeah, if you're watching this in the future, it might not be free anymore.
My gut feeling tells me that Midjourney uses Vectorizer AI's API. That's my gut feeling. It's just my gut feeling, but who knows?
Possible. Maybe if the prices go up in September, we'll know.
You may know.
Yeah. And in terms of removing background, because again, there's a million different ways to do that, and I feel like people really struggle with that, especially if they've got more complex graphics where the outline isn't really clear. Like, have you got any suggestions there in terms of how to do that best?
Yeah. So Midjourney does that as well. So that's interesting for everybody who either doesn't have a Mac or just wants to stay within Discord. But for anybody who has a recent Mac, you can just take any image, go to the file in the Finder, right-click the file, go to the Quick Actions menu item, and then choose Remove Background. And then it removes the background. A lot of people are not aware of this feature. And I wasn't aware of this until a few months ago either. But it is really good. Yeah, and it's free. It's straight in the OS.
That's really interesting. For people who have an Apple, for Windows people, obviously that doesn't work. But no, if you've got a Mac, definitely check that out. If it gets good results, that's a good alternative.
Yeah. For Windows, unfortunately, I don't have a recommendation because I switched to Mac 15 years ago. So
yeah, no worries. Well, I'll give a few recommendations then. Obviously, if you want to put in extra time and get more accurate results, use something like Photoshop, Photopea, do it manually. I have got that covered in different videos. Or there is ClipDrop, which is a free website where you can do it with files up to 1024 by 1024 pixels. Coincidentally, you can do it there for free and get really good results. And My Designs also has that same background remover from ClipDrop integrated in bulk. and it gets the same great results. So that is a bit easier to do, but it's not always going to be 100% accurate. If you want to be 100% accurate, try and learn how to use Photoshop or Photopea, I would say. So on the topic of tools then to help with Midjourney, do you have any other recommendations? Because I know you've got one yourself, which I've mentioned in a video.
Yeah, it's kind of the only tool that so I don't use many other tools related to Midjourney itself, just because I'm a bit of a purist. So I actually just like typing. I just type my prompts most of the time. I don't use any other tools really. The one tool that I do use is a tool that I built initially primarily for myself, because I got so tired of copying and pasting the previous prompt that I wanted to reuse, and then I go down to it was so tedious and cumbersome. And so I decided to use my limited coding skills plus some help from ChatGPT to build a Chrome extension that was very simplistic at the beginning and just allowed me to copy the entire prompt and then just paste it in. But then people started noticing it in my videos and then asked, what is this? Like, where can I find this? Where can I get this? And then I decided, okay, maybe I need to make this a little bit more professional. And then I built the Prompt-A-Lot Chrome extension. Yes, it sounds like a reference to Camelot, and it is kind of an inside joke, but it's mostly about prompting a lot. And it's available as a Chrome extension. It's for free. And it works. The extension works by itself and does everything it should do. It allows you to copy certain sections of the prompt, sometimes just the image prompts or just the text prompt, the seed. But it also does a whole bunch of other things now, like it makes it really easy to delete your designs to just a click of a button. Some people want to upscale all 4 images with one click, it does that too. And then it's essentially also just a helper extension for my other project, which is the Prompt-A-Lot website, which right now is still somewhat limited, but it's meant to become a repository for all of your prompts, workflows, like a central management platform for you. That's the one that I use because it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and I've started using it as well, and it is really, really handy because that's what Midjourney lacks, I think, is shortcut buttons, easy ways to save prompts, stuff like that. So it's nice to have a platform that can integrate quite seamlessly with Midjourney or Discord, and that is also free. Like, that's obviously the best part. If you enjoyed that clip, then click here to watch the full episode of Print on Demand Wisdom.